You enter a chamber, 30 feet by 20, with a 10-foot ceiling. At one end, a strange figure hunches over a set of old books and mysterious tomes, wearing a large hat resembling a sleeve from another garment. Cackles maniacally. Roll a DC 16 intelligence save. At disadvantage, for you have just entered the Lair of Knowledge. This book review isn't just big, it's colossal. Greetings, programs. It's I'm your old greetings. Anchoring for an ale here, you old buddy. Drunkards and Dragons, we're back once again. There's so much to get to. I'm not even going to do the usual intro about all the cool comments, side stories, questions, and community activity, inspiring pictures, inspiring tales, all convalescing. They're not convalescing, they're coalescing into a colony of pure amazingness. Least of which not being recent developments in the Harbinger department. Fantastic. And for my part, I've been mostly invisible since the Fort video, at least as far as my YouTube videos go, because I was going to say balls deep, but I think I'm more neck deep in the IC RPG core book. Enough crap! In your campaign, you're homebrewing your game, you're doing all the things, you got some money, you get home from a hard day's work earning a few ducats, basically just getting pooped on all day, you got like a few dollars to spend, you don't know what you're gonna do, but you do know it's time for a new book to spice up your life. Well, I am here, hopefully, as your humble, sleeve-hatted servant to help you make that clutch decision. There's a bug in my eye. Someone cast iBug, and they put it in a level 2 slot. To it. The first book is fantastic. Took me more than a month to really sort of absorb, get to know, had to snuggle up with this thing. I had to spend some time in the wilderness to really understand the joy. But a lot of you out there are ahead of me on this. This is the masterpiece known as 13th Age. 13th Age is amazing. This is incredible. So, I always evaluate books on 3 criteria, right? The mechanics that you're going to get that maybe you could harvest for your game no matter what system you're playing. The book craft, which is like, how awesome is it to have this book? How communicative is it? How brilliant of an experience? How long do you actually sit, especially on your first viewing, of absorbing this before you sort of lose interest or spiral off into something else? That's a big measure of how well a book is mind melding with you, directly communicating all of the wonder that goes into these books. Because, let's face it, tons of super smart people put tons of time into making these things. And the trick of a book is not how brilliant the ideas are, but how well they go from those creators into your brain, to your table, into your life. So, enough abstracta. 13th Age, mechanically, probably one of the tightest, most brilliant, most refined mechanical systems and core rule books I have ever seen. Boom. It's still D20 at its heart. It's still AD&D at its heart in a lot of ways. Totally awesome and intuitive. If you're playing 5th edition, this goes right into your 5th edition game or expands on it or whatever. There are 2 mechanics that probably a lot of you already know about, but that I was new to in 13th Age that are freaking genius. The first is the escalation dice, which is a very Drunkards and Dragons, hankering for an ale kind of way to your tabletop. Double up, D6 on the table. With each round of play, it clicks up. It's escalating. Based on that, it just becomes a flat bonus for everybody playing. And then some characters have abilities that will be able to pop when the escalation dice has escalated far enough. The effects of this are fantastic. It speeds up combat, especially the more combat goes on. It becomes faster and faster, more successful, more deadly, which we all know is much needed. And then it also gives players these sort of timed powers, which just make things pop and intensify. Freaking brilliant and super simple and described in depth. Just if they called this book 13th Age, the escalation die, it would still be worth the money. They have is the iconic relationships. So in their world, they have these sort of demigods, powerful creatures, and all the players have relationships to these powerful lords and demigods and so forth. And they actually have a dice system to connect what's happening in an improvised story to those mega characters or lords of the world. And I'm not going to get into all of that because that's not how I do book reviews. You'll get into all that when you get this book because you're awesome. And that's what is this? Lady Death sticker. Oh, that's cool. And methods for creating monsters. These guys expose all the root logic that they use to create all their content so that you can do it. I love that in a book. Instead of pretending like they know something you don't, they just give you the arcanum that creates 13th Age. Oh. Bookcraft. Freaking brilliant. This book gets you so excited to play 13th Age and walks you into it in a way that you want to be part of these sort of demigod or icon is what they call them, the icon stories, the powers that move this world. You want to be a part of it. You want to defy the nasty ones and join forces with the cool ones, and hell yeah, awesome on that front. The overall ability to comprehend what's in here, fantastic. The layout, brilliant. The guys that made this, and I'm not going to belabor you, but these are all old veterans and awesome dudes that have worked on D&D and a bunch of other projects that came together to be inspired and create this. They clearly know how to get an idea down on paper and into your imagination. Art, pretty good. They have one artist in here, sort of a pencil-y style artist, and that artist's work is fantastic. It's a lot of the main sort of splash pieces are this sort of sepia-colored, here's one, sort of pencil art. And this stuff is really great. It's fully realized. A lot of scenes and excitement, but with sort of leaving room for imagination in a fantastic way. Unfortunately, beyond that, it's a little thin on art. The maps are pretty cool, but oh my goodness, you get into the monster section and there isn't really art for each monster, which I know the standards are high, but if you buy books to collect art, this probably isn't the best choice. But it is really, really well done. The quality of the art is fantastic. It's just they didn't quite have every monster pictured out in a way that just kind of gets you. But their overall splash art, layout, and page quality, all that stuff, impeccable. And well over 2 years that we've all been playing 5th edition, and it's time to homebrew 5th edition, to bring in new things, to consider new innovations, to change and grow and be awesome. And 13th Age is going to have a big, big part in that movement. And it is totally worth checking out. This is yes. A weighty tome. Oh, grant me another wood. What do we have here? This is even bigger than the last book. Good God, what is this? Rapana Thuk Part 2? Oh no, it's got amazingly awesome modern colors. It's burly. And it's white, and it looks like DCC. Dear Lord, it's HUBRIS. This book is awesome. All right, so this is a major gear shift from 13th Age. 13th Age is definitely a sort of D&D D20 familiar zone. You're going to feel right in there, and it's for that kind of player. If you're the DCC type of player, which has a very different kind of take on what characters are, how they live and die, the predictability, and especially the flavor of the universe. The DCC universe has a very particularly written tone, and the fans of that system love that tone. I know I do. I don't really just, sit at my game table with my DCC book and be like, here's the next D100 table with a bunch of cool shit on it, and I'm going to roll on it, and we're going to read it, and then we're going to build a story. I don't really play that way, but I can really see how you could. And HUBRIS takes that type of gameplay, that DCC type of gameplay, and takes it to a sort of a little wilder place. DCC has a good sense of humor about itself, the original system. It's kind of, Gru-like in a way at times, right? It's weird, it's dark, it's humorously dark, it's kind of troubling and odd and very, very detailed in how it brings this kind of tweaky world to life. And this, if you're playing DCC and you played a bunch of their content and you're looking where to go next, man, this book is brilliant. I don't know how many years it took him to make this, but this thing is amazing. And it has all the trappings and blessings of DCC. So you get your full, wonderful hardback that's all square and burly with your DCC style layouts and D100 tables coming out the wazoo, and this kind of old school art style that's, you know, of course, black and white and very inky. Hard for me to fully capture the wonder of this thing. So mechanics, pretty much DCC mechanics, which are fantastic and just taken to new places with some new oddities and coolness to them. So nothing insanely new there. There are some great new character classes in here that I totally don't want to spoil. You got to get the book. But the classes have really cool sort of progression, but it's not quite mechanics. They're just brilliant new classes. I really, really had a fun time reading through the classes. And, you know, usually I like really old school classes, but man, these are just so cool and flavorful and fun. It's awesome. So that each one of these sort of little vignettes of flavor is created is a lot like Rapana Thuk in that you can just kind of rip through it, go anywhere in the book and find cool things. It's always fun how it just talks in adventure hooks or it just talks in table usage. And in that way, the book craft is absolutely brilliant. Finally, art. You know, something about old school black and white ink art, you can't really honestly say, well, oh, that's as fully realized as, you know, like the 5th edition Monster Manual is, you know. It isn't. It's more like less people doing it, probably with less time and less resources, and maybe even doing it on paper like the DMG does and stuff. But I gotta say, there is a lot of value in suggestive art rather than completely realized art. It does something weird to your brain that makes your brain want to fill in the details and create and just dream it up rather than being handed it. Rather than it being handed to you, right? There's something about like an ink drawing of a displacer beast that is more evocative than a fully realized, you know, concept painting of a displacer beast. So you won't find anything nearly as commonplace as a displacer beast in here. You're talking mind grubs in here. The way it's going to surprise your players is gonna be fantastic. Surprise and revile. So get HUBRIS. This is fantastic. Just the wacky and crazy color choices they made on the cover is a sort of a great statement about where this book goes and takes you. And I'm only like halfway through this, really. But I just love it. It's such a fun bedtime read of what new crazy landscape am I going to discover and how can it inspire the next moment when I'm drawing a blank and I need something at my table. So, absolutely love HUBRIS. I don't even want to choose between 13th Age and HUBRIS. That's mean. Next we have quite a monolith here. Now, since we are, as I mentioned, in the sort of second moon of 5th edition, to me that's when a lot of minds who are just neck deep in 5th edition, or balls deep if you prefer, start looking around, and that's when cool things like Harbinger starts happening, right? The season of science fiction role-playing is here, or science fantasy, whatever you like to call it, and of basically just changing things up. We've all done 2 or 3 huge campaigns, or we're right in the middle or coming down on our 5th edition, where you're like finishing out of the Abyss or something like that, and like looking for new ideas. And especially in the realm of science fiction, looking for new ideas, I had to go ferret this out. I had heard about this. Wade Dyer, I think, is the author's name of Fragged Empire. This is Fragged Empire. Since I've been getting into Harbinger and wanting to play with Absolute Tabletop and wanting to do art for Harbinger and just dreaming about sort of sci-fi play, how to bring it into my 5e campaign and so on and so forth. You know, just like we always have, it's just Spelljammer, Harbinger, whatever. It was 3d6 system. I'm always curious about those because I'm a GURPS head from back in the day, blah, 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 blah. All right, so what's up with Fragged Empire? Well, mechanics. Ale. The mechanics in Fragged Empire are detailed. I mean, it is here. If you are into a big science fiction game with tons of potential and avenues for mastery and ins and outs. This is going to blow your mind. It is huge and awesome. I can't get into everything because there's just so many, all how they do range and resolution and characters and monsters. But the one thing I really liked about this is how they do downtime, spaceship building, weapon modding, and stuff like this. It's a system with resources and influence and so forth. And it's really nice. You know how I am. I'm super skeptical about downtime. You always need really good systems to make that fun and controlled and exciting and goal building and blah, 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 right? Fragged Empire does an awesome job at it. So it's my favorite mechanic to come out of this book. Other than that, I mean, his 3d6 system is fantastic. It's basically an obstacle beater, roll system with any sixes in your roll being super hits, so almost a blend of GURPS and Shadowrun in a simpler way, but just really well thought out and really realized, to be frank, I probably won't get those mechanics to my table because they're just a little bit too different from a D20 world, and it takes a little bit too much mind static. So I wind up just enjoying his book more to get ideas and let the sci-fi veins kind of open up rather than scouring for mechanics. So that's where I'm at on that one. It is a huge, dense book, so I suppose that's where they're getting the price. It is really well developed and big, but it's just, that's a lot of money for one book. The book craft, though, is pretty much top of the line. It's all glossy. He has hired several, full-blown sort of concept artists to do this. Not all of the art is quite as staggering as you want it to be, but some of them are so freaking cool. And they're in these large kind of sidebar format that it's just exciting to get the old sci-fi noodle turning. So he also has these great charts that are a whole page where it's just an icon to help you understand a concept and a tiny little blurb. And then an icon and a concept. So if you're looking at how am I going to get treasure? He'll break it down into one of these cool charts. And he does it throughout. He even does it on the back cover. What's inside the book is sort of described with these futuristic icons. And he has a whole icon language, and it's just fantastic. Mount St. Helens is on my face. I didn't even know I had a face, but now I do. Look at this. Look at this little man. Look at this little fella. Hello. I'm a tiny little book. Lighter and Black are these little house. It's a professor, actually, from over near the East Coast, I think, who does these little books. I think he's a professor of comics or something crazy. Anyway, he finds time to write these cool little Dungeon World books. So talk about the opposite end. This is a little drive-through RPG jabberoni. So you're looking at the $90 range on Fragged Empire. This little dude, I think, was $8, maybe $12. You get the PDF and you get this cool little, it's almost like a cool little brochure. It reminds me of the old days, with cheap-ass games and stuff. I loved those things. So, mechanics. This is a Dungeon World book, so it uses Dungeon World mechanics to generate places, to move across hex crawls, to make towns, to make dungeons, give them detail, give them life, and give them character, and it's bloody freaking spot on brilliant. Of everything that I'm reviewing tonight, this is the most worth your money. This is probably the best NPC name list I've ever seen. This guy is an absolutely fantastic writer, and I actually took a bunch of notes while I was reading this because it reminded me how you can never overvalue the precision and control of English that you have in a book. And this guy is brilliant with the brevity, cleanliness, and properness of his English, and how it just cuts into your brain. It reminded me of Astounding Swords and Sorcerers, I think it's called, which was also written just very professory sounding, very collegiate level writing that is just brief and tight and frickin' perfect. Absolutely fantastic. So Lamplighter and Black, you're absolutely brilliant. Okay, so that's the mechanics. They go right into your game. If you don't get a fun idea you just want to jot down in your journal while you're reading this, you don't have a heart. You're a stone golem. And by stone golem, I mean broccoli man. Art. There are few books, or even series of books, better than Lamplighter and Black's art. It is like no one else's art. It has its own voice, its own style, and it is unapologetic, and it is brilliant. Even I would say of everything I reviewed tonight, the best art is in these Lamplighter and Black books. It's somewhat serious, somewhat not. It's black and white, but it's not quite line art. It's just enough to feel like, man, these are adventures just like waiting to happen. And you know, like every good D&D group has a little bit of humor, but a little bit of epic. And this just captures it brilliantly. The typefacing and everything, my goodness. And that takes us right to Bookcraft. It doesn't get any better. Oh, now, get to the Perilous Wilds. I think at some point I made a vow I would never do the Arnold voice in these videos, and I just broke it. It was inevitable. Are you down with TFTYP? I'm down with TFTYP. Yeah, you play D&D. I'm down with TFTYP. Who's down with TFTYP? Everybody who wants to play 5e, not really. It's a pretty well-made book. You know, D&D makes pretty slick books, and they somehow find a way to charge you a lot for a thin book. I'm not sure why. I guess it's just clout, and people want to complete their collections. The spines always look cool next to each other, but this is a pretty thin book, and you overpay for it. But you know, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I did that with Sword Coast. It's all right, no big deal. It's my responsibility to buy books, and sometimes they're overpriced. That's okay, no big deal. The art is really great in this thing. The maps are really cool. And it's all stuff that we already bought, and they're selling it to us again. I don't have to be so judgmental, right? You can go into this with an open heart. So what I did was I got my original Tomb of Horrors here, and I got my TFTYP, and I kind of sat down with both and paged to the back of Yawning Portal. I found the Tomb of Horrors section and started just getting my party on, right? I mean, this is, well, hell, that's a Friday night right there. You 6-pack of beer and these. We're in this second moon of 5th edition right now. It's time for innovation to happen and interestingness. The next generation is arising and new things are happening, and it's awesome. And somehow, during that season of wonder, WotC has found a way to not only regurgitate stuff they've already published almost verbatim, but there's a greater crime being committed here. I'm probably going to get into some trouble with this one. The age of mega dungeons is over. The idea of belaboring a group of players through a series of 100 little tiny rooms interconnected with somewhat interesting details in each room, so that maybe they can decipher some kind of somewhat put together story is over. It was totally awesome, don't get me wrong. It is the roots of everything we do. It's where I started, was doing big dungeons, describing rooms, mapping, distances matter, trapped floor squares, like this square's trapped, that one isn't, this room is 40 across, that one's 20 across, and that matters. We have evolved as a hobby and as a community. We have moved forward, and it is not losing sight of the wonder of the big dungeon, of the detailed dungeon, of the room-to-room dungeon. We didn't lose it, we used it. We stood upon it, and lo, we saw above the clouds to the new future that we're seeing today. New RPG play gets through more. It does more. It's bigger. I think it's more fun because it's been more worked on. You don't work on a thing for 35 years, 40 years, and it doesn't get better. It's better. This thing, there's a reason this is still on my shelf. I freaking love this thing. There's so many wonderful memories associated with this dungeon and what this represented and what this still represents. But then to just be like, hey guys, don't look away for a second. Okay, you want a new book? Hey, you want a Rolling Stones box set? So, is it a great book? Yes. If you don't know anything about the 7 classic dungeons in this book, it might be interesting as a little bit of a history class. But if you want a history class, find these. The most important thing to me is that we are moving ahead into an innovative period with RPG creation. Dungeon World helped us go there. 13th Age is helping us go there. DCC stays old school, but it's innovating in new and expansive ways. 13th Age, we've got HUBRIS, we've got Perilous Wilds, we've got Fragged Empire, and of course, Tales from the Yawning Portal. A lot of people say, there's that whole thread about the lonely side of the hobby, about like collecting books and reading things by yourself, and it's not, is it dark or whatever? Hell no, it's not dark. It's called research. You ever seen a wizard? Millions of books. Just because he's not casting fireball every 2 seconds doesn't mean he's not doing wizard. This is wizard. Thank God. My skull was screaming for mercy. And my skull's pretty stubborn. So we've got the Depths of the Dark Brotherhood, which is the follow-on to the Burning in New Haven, campaign. So if you guys are running that, there's a great big dungeon coming. I know I've been saying that for a couple weeks now, but it is about ready, and filming will commence on that very soon. After that, we are going to continue the campaign with the Rangers of Numidia as well. Remember, they're heading down to Frogwood. There's been a little bit of a delay there, but remember, they're chasing Garrett Frack, the Sahagwin summoner. So we're going to get back to that whole thing, and we're going to follow on with another big dungeon video there. I noticed that everybody really loves specific, usable table content, and so that's what we're going to do. Hanker and Ferdale signing off. You guys keep it real, don't steal, you always get a deal.